Hey guys, what's going on? MJ Madness here, and today I thought I would run down for you my 2016 MLB Playoff Predictions. So, at the time of recording this video, the MLB Playoffs kick off later tonight with the Orioles taking on the Blue Jays. So I thought, why not make a video giving you my picks for every single series that's going to take place this playoffs, as well as an eventual World Series champ. So, without further ado, let's get into the bracket where I will break down my picks of the 2016 MLB playoffs. So, we'll start things out by going through the wildcard games. I'm not going to lie, I don't love the wildcard format right now. I think it's a little too random. If you have like an amazing pitcher, you can kind of get lucky. I would rather see it go to best of 3, but even still with my complaints, you can't argue that the wildcard games are always really exciting and intense because of what's on the line, so I'll definitely be watching the TV when those take place. So the first game we have is the American League wildcard, where we have two teams in the same division. They've played each other a lot, the Baltimore Orioles and the Toronto Blue Jays. Now these teams had identical records this season, but Toronto held the tiebreaker because they won 10 games of the season series, and the Orioles only won 9. So they've definitely really close, evenly matched teams, and they've seen each other a lot. So they're pretty used to each other, and I think it definitely should be a pretty close game. Starting pitchers, the Orioles have Chris Tillman, and the Blue Jays have Marcus Stroman. So both pitchers pretty solid. I would have thought the Blue Jays might have started Francisco Liriano instead, but I think Stroman, he should be able to hold it down pretty well. And in the end, I think the Blue Jays have home field advantage as well, so I'm giving them the edge here. I think it'll definitely be a pretty close game. If the Orioles can get to the end and put in Zach Britton to close it off and maybe build up like a 1 or 2 run lead, they definitely could pull off the win. But I just trust Toronto more. I think they've been there before. They have the experience. They're at home. And in the end, I'm saying Toronto pulls away with this one. Now, over on the National League, you have the San Francisco Giants, who just squeaked into the playoffs, barely, only 1 game ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals, playing against the New York Mets. This should be a really good game, and I'm definitely excited for this one. The Giants have Madison Bumgarner pitching, one of the best pitchers in baseball, and the Mets have Noah Syndergaard, and he's pretty solid as well. Both of these teams haven't really played that much this season, but the Mets are obviously coming off that World Series final last year where they lost to the Kansas City Royals, and the Giants have won it in 2014 and in 2012 as well. So they definitely have the experience, and they've been there before. I think it's going to be a really good game, another close one, but in the end, I'm giving it to the home team again. I think the Mets have had a lot of rest. I think they'll be ready for this one. The Giants have been scrambling, and even with all that experience, I think the Mets take this one, and I'm seeing them pull off what some may consider the upset. So I'm saying the Mets win the National League wild card. Now that we've got the wild card done, let's get into divisional rounds, and I'll give you my picks for those games. So, starting things off in the American League, I'm going to be looking at the matchup between the Boston Red Sox and the Cleveland Indians. Both of these teams won their division this year. Boston probably won the tougher division, being that Toronto, Baltimore, and even the Yankees, who were pretty good this year, were all in that division. But both of these teams looked pretty good winning this season, as they did well. They had some pretty stud players, and they're definitely going to be contenders in the playoffs this year. In the end, I think this is going to be a pretty tight series. There might be some close games. In the end, though, I'm giving Boston the edge in this one, and I think that's because Cleveland has injuries. A lot of their star players are hurt. They're tired. They've been running around on the road a lot, and I think if they were fully healthy, then they'd be good and definitely have a much more close and tight series. But Boston's just been on such a roll as of late. They've won a bunch of games. They've been on a streak. And I think they're going to keep rolling. Beat Cleveland, not that easily, but not too difficult either. I'm saying Boston's going to take this one in 4 games. So I'm saying Boston over Cleveland in the first American League Division Series. Now, on the other side, we have the Texas Rangers against either the Baltimore Orioles or the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, as you know, I did pick the Blue Jays to advance, so I'm going to be doing this scenario assuming the Blue Jays win, which definitely might not happen. But if they do, I really would be excited to see this series. You may remember last year they had that insane series in the divisional round between the Rangers and the Blue Jays. That one ended with the Blue Jays coming back from 2-0 down. You may remember that big bat flip by Jose Bautista. It was quite an intense game, throwing stuff on the field and everything, and I would love to see a rematch of that series, which is why I really hope it happens. Now, if it does happen, it will be such a good game. These teams really have a rivalry. The bat flip kind of started it with that playoff series. Then they played again this year. You might remember Rougned Odor. He punched Jose Bautista in the face. He's a pretty crazy character, but he definitely has some talent as well. And this would be a great matchup to see. Now, in this matchup, I think the Rangers will be an overwhelming favorite, considering they've won the American League pennant. They were first in their entire league, and they've been doing pretty well this season. But what's an MJ Madness video without a couple of surprises? So I think I'm going to pick the Blue Jays to upset the Texas Rangers in this series in 5 games once again. I just trust Toronto more. I think they've done it last year. They've already beat the Texans, and it's definitely going to be a really intense series if it does manage to happen. But I'm taking the upset here, and I think that Toronto somehow finds a way to squeak by the Texas Rangers, putting the Toronto Blue Jays against the Boston Red Sox in the final series in the American League. Now let's jump over to the National League and look at the divisional matchups in those games. So first off, we have the LA Dodgers against the Washington Nationals. This should be some good games. Both of these teams definitely have some really elite players. Clayton Kershaw, Bryce Harper. It should be a really great game. A really great series, should I say. And I think both of these teams have definitely done well this season. Washington's missing some of their best players, though. And I think, you know what? I think Washington takes this one. I was really debating this one. It's going to be definitely a close series. Both of these teams are pretty evenly matched, and I think LA is probably the favorite in this one. But I just like Washington. I think Bryce Harper he is definitely one of like the top 3 players in the league. And so I think he's going to go to another level, really elevate his game here. And I think in another 5-game series, I'm picking the Washington Nationals to get by the LA Dodgers and advance to 1 round before the World Series. Now on the other side, we have the Chicago Cubs facing the winner of the Giants and the Mets. And assuming the Mets win, which again definitely may not happen, but if they do, I think this series, while close, I think the Cubs would definitely scare some people if they didn't win this one with ease, because the Cubs are definitely, in my opinion, the best team in baseball right now. They are absolutely flying. They're really solid all around. Great bullpen, great pitching, great hitting, great defense. Really everything you could want in a baseball team. And I think the Mets are going to really have a tough time keeping up with that. I'm saying that the Cubs beat whoever it is, either the Mets or the Giants. I'm predicting the Mets. And I say they beat the Mets 3-game sweep. I don't think they can compete with the talent and the depth that Chicago has. So those are all my picks for all the divisional series. And now let's get into my picks for who's going to make it into the World Series. And again, I'm thinking it's going to be between the Boston Red Sox and the Toronto Blue Jays from the American League, and in the National League between the Chicago Cubs and the Washington Nationals. So in the American League Championship Series, I'm predicting a matchup between the Toronto Blue Jays and the Boston Red Sox. These two are division rivals. They've played each other a lot this season, and it's definitely going to be a really great matchup if it does happen. I'm not going to lie, I hate the Red Sox. I think most people who are fans of baseball and aren't Red Sox fans dislike them just because of how they are. But despite me disliking the Red Sox, I can't lie that I believe they have the better team over the Toronto Blue Jays. And I think that even though I don't like them, they definitely have the talent, they have the skill, and I think they win this American League Championship Series. It was definitely a tough one for me. I think this one might go 6 or 7 games. I'm not really sure. Definitely two of the better teams in the American League. probably two of the best. And I think it should be a great matchup. The Blue Jays, they have that depth. They have the aging veterans that have been there before. The Jose Bautistas, Edwin Encarnacion, Troy Tulowitzki, Russell Martin, and then, of course, Josh Donaldson, one of the best players in baseball right now. So they definitely have that experience. But I just think that the Red Sox, they have so much talent, so much young players, people like Mookie Betts. And then this is the final season of David Ortiz, so they have that extra motivation to get there to the end, to do it for David. And I think that's going to drive them past it. Not only that, they have the home field. They've been resting, and I think Toronto's just going to be, they're going to be scrappy, and they'll definitely put up a fight. And you know what? I see this going 7 games. Definitely will be an amazing series if it does manage to turn out. But unfortunately, because I don't like them, I'm going to give this one to the Red Sox. And I see them reaching yet another World Series and making it all the way there and winning the American League over the Toronto Blue Jays. Definitely a close series, though, I predict. I'm thinking it goes all the way to 7. And in that home field in Fenway Park, I think Boston gets the win and moves on to the World Series. And then over on the National League Championship Series, I'm predicting a matchup between the Chicago Cubs and the Washington Nationals. Now, if you guys checked out my video I did a couple months back, the top 5 teams most likely to win the World Series, I had the Cubs and the Nationals as 1 and 2 respectively. And maybe a little bit of a spoiler here, but I really think the winner of this matchup is going to be the team that eventually takes home the World Series. I personally believe these two are probably among the best in baseball, and they definitely have the talent, each of them, that if they got to the World Series, they have a chance at winning it. But again, they both have to get by each other and all the other deep and talented teams in the National League. The Giants could be a contender. Who knows about the Mets? There's definitely things that could happen. Upsets could take place. But in the end, these two teams, I think, are the most likely matchup of happening. They have the most skill, the best players, the most experience, the most depth. A lot of things that just make them the two best teams in the National League. And if and when, at least in my opinion, they do match up, I think we are going to have one amazing series between these teams. The Cubs just have so many weapons. Jake Arrieta is an insane pitcher. They have great hitting, great defense, great everything. But the Washington Nationals, man, they are really good as well. Trea Turner definitely can hit. Bryce Harper is probably one of the best in baseball, as I said before. One thing, though, Steven Strasburg, at least at the time of the recording, he is injured, and he is their number 1 or number 2 pitcher, definitely. He's really important to that team, and so if he comes back, I could see them maybe pulling off what most would consider an upset against the Cubs. It's definitely possible, but I just think the Cubs have so much talent, so much depth, and even though Washington is definitely a really skilled team, they've never really been able to take that next step in the playoffs just quite yet, and I don't think this is the year for them to do it against this amazing Cubs team. I don't see a way the series doesn't go to 7. These are two extremely skilled teams, but in the end, I think the Cubs advance. They find a way, and they make it back to the World Series for the first time in a long time to match up with the Boston Red Sox. So I am predicting that the 2016 World Series will be between the Chicago Cubs and the Boston Red Sox. And I may have made this clear earlier, but I think the Chicago Cubs are going to win the 2016 World Series and end the 108-year curse. They're too good, and I think they are most definitely the best team in baseball right now. They definitely deserve to be the favorites going into the playoffs. And even though I love picking my upsets, I just don't really see a way that they manage to lose this one. Even if injuries do happen, they have so much backups, a great depth in the bullpen. I've talked about the Cubs so much this video, but I just gotta say it again. They're just too good of a team, and I think even though the Red Sox definitely have talent, they're going to be great. I think they'll be great in a few years. They're great right now, but they don't have what the Cubs take and what the Cubs have. And I think with Jake Arrieta leading them as the pitcher, some great hitters, after 108 years, I believe the drought will end. The Cubs will end the longest championship drought in the history of North American professional sports and finally win a World Series once again over the Boston Red Sox. I'm thinking it happens in maybe 6 games, and I think they're just the best team in baseball. And the best team isn't always the team that wins the World Series, but in this case, I think it's what's going to happen. They have all the tools to do so, and I may be wrong, but at least my prediction is that your 2016 World Series champions will be the Chicago Cubs. Now, if you guys enjoyed my video and want to see more baseball-themed videos, be sure to hit that like button. Also, check out my top 5 teams most likely to win the World Series from around 3 or 4 months ago, just as kind of an interesting take on what things were like around the league at that time. And the thing I'm most interested in, let me know your predictions, guys. I'd love to see who you think's going to win the World Series and over who. So leave your predictions in the comments down below. Be sure to like the video for more baseball-themed videos to come. And thank you guys all for watching, and take care.